Good morning and welcome to the EIT Future of Food Conference 2021. My name is Jennifer Baker. I'm going to be your Master of Ceremonies today, guiding you through the program, and we have got a packed program for you. This is the third year of the event, and of course, for obvious reasons, it's entirely virtual or digital this year. We're going to discuss a lot of the trends that we've seen emerging from the EU institutions in recent years, the food innovation priorities in Europe, the goals of the EU Farm to Fork strategy, and of course, the broader context of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We're going to discuss all these things along with EU policymakers, EIT food partners, and all the other stakeholders in the field. And of course, you, our audience, we want you to have a really engaging event. And it's going to take place over 2 days, as I say, here on the platform online. Of course, we do want you to get your colleagues involved as well, so please do use the hashtag FutureFood21 to get them on board as well. Now, we're going to use this virtual platform for both days of the event. You should use the same link every time you want to access it. And please remember, each link is unique, it's personalized to each attendee, so do use that. In the reception area, you can have a look at the event schedule. I'll take you through that in a little bit more detail in a moment, but you can personalize your own agenda because we of course have different breakout sessions, so it's up to you to choose which one you are most interested at any given time. The main stage, here where you are now, will host all the plenary content, and you don't want to miss that. I've got a lot of great speakers lined up, but you can then go to the different stages. A, B, and C will be used for the parallel breakout sessions. Don't forget, you can also check out the networking area. That's where we want you to engage with your fellow conference attendees. So do use that. Do say hello to them. We try to make it feel as much like a real event as is possible. I mentioned the hashtag. Please do use the social media channels of your choice to share your thoughts, make your comments, and perhaps include links to the most interesting sessions for you. Today, we're calling our sessions the Changemakers Summit. Tomorrow, we'll be talking about building an inclusive food system. So for the moment, I will tell you that we've got coming up a look at the UN Food Systems Summit and what's next for the EU. We will hear some keynote speakers. We then move on to a panel debate at 10:15 about commitment to action, innovation as a driver of social impact. We then have another plenary session where we'll be talking to a panel Generation Z representatives and where do we need to be a generation from now. We will also talk to a policymaker and innovators. Then this afternoon, we have those important parallel breakout sessions that I mentioned. There's 3 sessions this afternoon, one on sustainable food labeling, one on sustainable agriculture, and the final session dealing with HoReCa. That's the first half of your schedule. Later on, then we've got more breakout sessions on targeted nutrition and circular food systems. Quite a lot to get through today. And then, of course, we'll reflect on tomorrow morning. We'll reflect on everything we've talked about before we move into the second part of our agenda tomorrow on building an inclusive food system. But for today, it's all about change. It's all about addressing the role of younger generations in transforming food systems. We'll discuss the challenges and solutions in areas such as soil health, regenerative agriculture, circular food systems, sustainable food labeling. And we will also look at consumer trust in food, in education, and a special look at vocational education and training. That's one of the sessions I'm doing tomorrow afternoon. So do stay with us for all of those. With that, I think I would like to introduce us to our first speaker who's going to give the welcome remarks and set out what he's hoping to hear from our speakers and all of our involvement today. So it's the CEO of EIT Food, Andy Zinga. Andy, are you there? Thank you very much for being the driving force behind this. We're really grateful to EIT Food for this conference. It's really timely. We're coming out of a pandemic. The key word is resilience and sustainability. So I think it's a good point in our juncture at this time of the year to talk to it. So over to you for what you're hoping to get out of the next 2 days.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm indeed here, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen who are online. I thank you for attending EIT Food's annual Future of Food conference. This gathering of the brightest minds in agri-food has become something of a highlight on the annual conference calendars. And as the CEO of EIT Food, I welcome you to this year's fantastic event. It is great to see so many of you connecting from all over Europe and beyond. And I hope that you're all doing well despite the pandemic-related ups and downs that we're going through these days. While this is a challenging time for all of us, it is also one for our food systems. And I'm sure that many of you feel a kind of a sense of uncertainty and are asking yourselves many questions about the future of food. So where are we going? The United Nations Food Systems Summit, as recently stated by Dr. Kalibata, whom you're going to hear from in this conference as well, has asked countries to confront the reality of balancing food production with climate action, affordable food with healthy diets, and stable food supplies with fair and open trade. It has created the direction and legitimacy for unstoppable transformation of our food system. The European Union has adopted a bold climate objective. The goal is to become climate neutral by 2050. Already in 2020, the Farm to Fork strategy outlined a series of ambitious targets for the agri-food sector to achieve by 2030, such as reduction by 50% of the use of chemical pesticides, reduction of fertilizer use by at least 20%, and cutting in half per capita food waste at retail and consumer levels. All these goals talk about impact, and we believe that delivering impact is key. At EIT Food, our teams work very hard with many stakeholders, including our funding agency, the EIT, as well as the Commission and our partners to develop and implement an impact framework that has been guiding all of our activities. This included defining KPIs to measure impact at the level of every single project. As a result, we have adopted 4 impact goals, namely improvement in conditions leading to more trust in the food system, also better health outcomes from our diet, improved food systems environmental impact, and enabling the transition to a circular and sustainable food economy so as to reduce food waste and food loss. We have translated those impact goals into 6 key focus areas which promise the greatest innovation and impact potential, and they include sustainable agriculture, sustainable aquaculture, alternative proteins, digital traceability, targeted nutrition, and circular food systems. Around all of this, there are still a good number of open questions which we'll need to answer in the months and years to come. That is because it's not sufficient to just develop innovative solutions and convert great ideas into concrete applications. We also need to accelerate and scale these innovations in the market to develop impact. So the key questions to ask are then, what actions do we need to take to accelerate and scale those innovations? Which solutions should take priority, and what do we need to invest in given that we have limited resources at our disposal? Are we ready to break away from business as usual to embrace innovation with societal impact? Are we ready to behave differently and change our production and consumption patterns? And what barriers do we face when we go to market with new products and new business models? But it isn't just EIT Food that's facing those questions. They're also faced by the EU, its member states, and every organization which is working towards meeting these goals I have listed before. Answering these questions requires making choices, sometimes hard choices, as going for one model or for one product might mean getting rid of another, which is then obsolete and unsustainable. Making this transition fair and inclusive is also just as important as delivering that impact. We are hosting this very conference to share and discuss those questions with you. It's a collective debate for which we've invited experts and professionals from very different backgrounds: policymakers, scientists, researchers, innovators, entrepreneurs, farmers, and representatives from industries active in food processing, distribution, and the HoReCa sector, as well as consumer and civil society organizations. The diversity of the audience of this conference reflects the big diversity of actors involved in food systems. And I'm inviting you to join this debate on the future of food and share with us your ideas and solutions, and importantly, also your needs and expectations. EIT Food stands for collaboration and co-creation. The value of our pan-European ecosystem with its 240 plus partners, 6 regional offices, and 21 regional innovation hubs is in the connections and collaborations it creates, facilitating the exchange of problems, solutions, and opportunities. About a month ago, we've launched one of our innovation calls for 2022, which is open to all stakeholders across the EU and Horizon Europe's associated countries. I really hope that many of you will join a consortium and will send in your ideas, helping us address the questions which we need to answer to deliver that impact that I was talking about. But these questions are not just for us who are responsible for managing food systems today. They're also for those who will take over tomorrow and will inherit the food systems that we will leave behind. We believe that young people are instrumental in shaping the future of food and deserve a seat at the table. To give them a voice, we commissioned new research to better understand how young people aged 18 to 24 years old, the so-called Generation Z, view and interact with healthy food across Europe. This research sampled 2,055 adults, equally split across the UK, France, Germany, Poland, and Spain. The findings demonstrate a generation that is keenly interested, knowledgeable, and engaged when it comes to their eating habits. Nearly 3/4 of Generation Z say they see healthy eating as an integral part of their physical and mental health. Furthermore, over half of the sample, namely 52%, track their food consumption by counting calories or by tracking the macronutrients in the food that they eat. 58% of young people said that the pandemic has made them more aware of eating healthy. Although they're taking action on healthy eating, they want more support and advice in order to become active food system change makers. They want to be part of the solution. 66% of young people stated they would consider taking a job in food education, and a full 64% said they would take a job in food innovation. This shows how the increased interest in nutrition is potentially leading young people to pursue active roles in shaping the future of food. This is also exactly why we need to involve them more in our initiatives. After publishing these data, which you can find on our website, we actually recruited a group of 10 Generation Z food experts and activists, the so-called future food makers, and invited them to work on a manifesto to tell the sector and the world what they want from the future of their food system. That is what they call their menu for change. Today, 5 of our future food makers will present the menu for change during this conference. I am very grateful to these young leaders for their hard work on the menu and for their inspiring motivation and passion. I really look forward to them sharing their ideas and recommendations and joining the debate on the future of food with you all over the next 2 days. With that, I wish you an enjoyable and insightful event, and thank you once again for attending this annual conference with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Indeed, you've done a great job there in introducing us to the program and things to look out for. Indeed, the menu for change is one of the ones I'm looking forward to as well. So thank you for that. I know you'll be staying with us over the coming days, and I hope we'll be able to hear from you a little bit about what you've been finding most insightful. Session 1 this morning is about, as Andy explained, the United Nations Food Systems Summit. We're 2 months out, and so we're going to take stock of the summit outcomes. We're going to look at the role of the EU in implementing some of the commitments through investment in food research, innovation, and education. So because of this, we're going to hear from the European Commissioner. We will also hear representative from Slovenia, the, of course, European Council, as well as special envoys and general coordinators from the UN. So with that, let me first introduce you to Janusz Wojciechowski, who is the EU Commissioner for Agriculture, who has recorded a special exclusive message for us this morning.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to contribute to the launch of this conference. Let me begin by saying I'm very impressed with the work being undertaken by the EIT Food Initiative and its partners. Your projects in the areas of innovation, education, entrepreneurship, and consumer engagement show exactly the kind of ideas and initiative we need to achieve the ambitions and commitments raised at the UN Food Summit. On behalf of the European Commission, I would like to bring you our perspective on what we are doing throughout the European Union to meet these ambitions and commitments. Let me start with the pre-summit in Rome, which I had the honor of attending on behalf of the Commission. The message from Rome was clear. We all need to step our efforts to make our food systems more sustainable and more capable of meeting our 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. In the European Union, we are taking action, indeed many actions, through the Farm to Fork strategy. The strategy is the heart of our efforts towards more competitive and sustainable food systems. In the strategy, we are taking a systemic approach. We want to tap into new opportunities across different sectors by developing integrated responses that can benefit people, nature, and economic growth. Let me give you some concrete examples of what I mean. Let me start with the overall framework before the end of 2023. The Commission will table a proposal to put in place a framework for a sustainable food system. Our aim is to progressively raise sustainability standards so that they become the norm for all food products placed on the EU market. We are planning a broad consultation to hear the views of stakeholders and citizens on this topic. Further, on the market side, we will next year put forward a proposal for a revision of the European Union marketing standards. The purpose of this revision is to provide for a greater uptake and supply of sustainable agricultural products, thereby complementing to other actions of the Farm to Fork strategy. We believe that consumer demand for food that is higher in quality, healthier and more sustainable can generate new opportunities for farmers and the wider rural economy. To help farmers take advantage of these opportunities, we must combine our legislative approach with concrete actions that can bring short to medium-term results on the ground. Carbon farming represents an example of a green business opportunity for our farmers. By the end of this year, the Commission will put forward a proposal for a new EU carbon farming initiative. This will reward farmers and foresters for practices that remove CO2 from the atmosphere, thus contributing to the carbon neutrality objectives through a new sustainable business model. I'd like to conclude by stressing the key role of CAP strategic plans in fulfilling the ambitions of the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy. Member States are due to submit their plans to the Commission by the end of the year, outlining how they will spend agricultural funds from 2023 to 2027. For the first time in the history of the CAP, they will implement the most significant support instruments in budgetary terms in the same territory under a single programming instrument. This is a key step to guarantee a more consistent and strategic approach in the design and implementation of the different instruments, in particular between the two pillars of the CAP. We expect and will encourage Member States to take full advantage of this strategic approach to help deliver on the ambitions of the Farm to Fork strategy. That said, I recognize that the CAP is not the only tool that will play a role in addressing these challenges. An active and continuous contribution from all relevant policies is necessary to realize our goals. Ladies and gentlemen, I have touched upon just some of the many opportunities and tools that the Farm to Fork strategy and the CAP offer. The task ahead of us is complex, but I am happy to see that we are not alone in this. The EIT Food Initiative sets out a good approach how we can bring together projects and partners to make our food systems more sustainable, healthy and trusted. I am particularly encouraged by the launch of the manifesto from the EIT Food Future Food Makers. It is very pertinent that youth participates in this debate. So let us use this conference to discuss how we can work together to realize our shared goals and achieve the transition to sustainable food systems in Europe and across the world. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. We are very grateful indeed that you took the time to share those thoughts with us. I think it speaks to how important this conference is that the Commissioner is taking time to address us individually. We're going to turn now to the European Council representative. So from Slovenia, the Minister for Agriculture, Forestry and Food, Jože Podolšek. Minister, have we got you on the line? Thank you very much for joining us. As we heard there from the Commissioner, the conclusions of the UN Food Systems Summit are very important. Tell us what are those key conclusions? What does the European Union need to do to deliver on those commitments and also on the goals of the Farm to Fork strategy, in particular to meet its ambitions to become climate neutral by 2050?
Hello, could you hear me? Is everything okay?
Okay,
good. Very good. Distinguished Commissioner, distinguished participants in the event, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start, I would like to recall the preparations for the pre-summit and the UN Food System Summit and the preparation of the EU were an important priority of the trio presidency and the Slovenian presidency of the Council of the EU. To reply to your question, the statement of action that the UN Secretary General presented at the summit brings together all the key action points of the UN Food System Summit. It highlights that sustainable food systems are critical for delivering on all of the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and that the global transition of food systems can play an essential role in driving forward the recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. The summit has also given rise to a great number of commitments to accelerate action for the transition to sustainable food systems, including through partnerships and multi-stakeholders initiatives. The implementation of countries' commitments at local, national, and international levels will be crucial. In this regard, the EU has been integrating the Sustainable Development Goals into its policy since the adoption of the 2030 Agenda. At the EU level, changes to food systems are driven by the European Green Deal with the Farm to Fork strategy and the biodiversity strategy for 2030. With these strategies, the EU is carrying out reforms to be able to, among other things, ensure a healthy, balanced and sustainable diet for all European consumers, reduce food waste and food loss and at all levels, and provide an optimized and resource-efficient circular food chain in Europe. The highly prioritized goals of the EU are to improve sustainability in the food processing, retail, food services, and catering sectors in order to achieve a climate neutral food chain in Europe by 2050, as well as to reduce net emissions from these activities in order to contribute to the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the EU food chain by 55% by 2030.
Well, thank you very much, Minister. Just a quick follow-up question as I have you. At the national level, looking at your own country, what is Slovenia doing on the ground to tackle the food system's challenges from farm to fork? And maybe you could give me some concrete initiatives, some ideas about what's taking place in Slovenia.
Yes, thank you. As an EU member state, Slovenia is committed to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and to achieving change and transition to sustainable food systems together with other EU member states in the framework of the European Green Deal, the Farm to Fork strategy, and the biodiversity strategy. In the light of the new challenges in the food supply, including the COVID-19 pandemic, Slovenia believes that food systems must ensure food security and the sustainable use of natural resources, adapt effectively to climate change, and ensure the livelihood for farmers and other stakeholders in the food chain. Sustainable consumption and innovative technical solutions are important factors in achieving these goals. Food security and the provision of safe and quality food, the protection of biodiversity, animal welfare, sustainable development, the fights against climate change and food waste, and circular economy are at the top of Slovenia's political agenda. Concerning the initiatives taken, Slovenia is paying special attention to the diets of children and adolescents with school nutrition programs. We have developed several national school nutrition programs and associated activities, which take into account national dietary guidelines and are complemented by activities such as the Slovenian Food Day and the traditional Slovenian breakfast, the EU fruit, vegetables, and milk scheme for schools, cooking classes for teachers and students as part of the Cooking Kids projects, school gardens, beekeeping activities, and promoting the consumption of honey products. In this way, we promote healthy dietary patterns in children and adolescents and seek to prevent overweight, obesity, and diet-related diseases. In addition to EU strategies, we also have national policies such as the resolution on Slovenia, such as the resolution on Slovenia's long-term climate strategy until 2050, the resolution on the national program on nutrition and physical activity for health 2015-2025, and the resolution Our Food, Rural and Natural Resources from 2021. I would like to recall that in preparing for the UN Food System Summit, Slovenia held a national dialogue with the aim of seeking solutions for accelerating the transition to a sustainable food production and consumption. During the discussion, it presented examples of good practice and emphasized in particular the role of young people, women, and small producers, which will be taken into account in formulating future policies.
Thank you very much, Minister, for that insight. We will, of course, during this conference, be talking about the role of young people and of women and gender balance. But I'm struck how lucky the kids in Slovenia must be to have beekeeping lessons. That sounds wonderful. I wish I had that opportunity. Thank you very much for talking to us. I'm going to speak now to our next keynote speaker for this section, and that's Dr. Agnes Kalibata, the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for 2021 Food Systems Summit. Dr. Kalibata, thank you very much for being here. You've seen those commitments from the summit. You've heard there the Minister and the Commissioner talking about what they are and why they're so important. So tell us how we move on from commitment. What are the key steps we need to take next?
Thank you, Jennifer, for those introductory remarks. And I really want to start by appreciating the EU for its leadership in, first of all, ensuring that the summit happens. The summit was really funded by EU and a number of member states from the EU. But to go to your question, let me just paint for you a picture of what the momentum we got out of the summit looked like. Just think about how many dialogues we're able to mobilize. Thousands and thousands of dialogues. In fact, we just celebrated the 1,000th dialogue. We did see lots of member states step forward with lots of commitments. We did see the Secretary General step forward with 5 areas around which he wants to hold himself accountable and all of us accountable. And we did see a real commitment coming out of countries around how to move our food systems summit. I mean, our food systems forward. So in terms of the type of things we need to do, we have to anchor them in what the momentum that the summit helped us build there, as I just said. And I want to call out a few things. 81 countries called out the need for collaboration. So building on the momentum from the summit will be ensuring that we actually recognize the need for collaboration and meeting countries where they are at and supporting countries that need support while collaborating on issues that we can't come through on by ourselves. We need to recognize that delivering on the food systems agenda is going to have to be anchored in strong national and regional ownership. We just saw an example from the EU here. The level of ownership of the food systems outcomes in this summit alone is a very good example. But we also saw, for example, the African continent put forward a common position. So how we anchor those and ensure that we continue supporting and strengthening national perspectives and supporting the ability for countries to really understand how they can come through is going to be extremely important. I applaud the EU and what the commissioner just put forward around what the EU is doing with the Farm to Fork strategy. Really presents huge potential to bring radical change in the agricultural sector to ensure that real transformation happens to profit farmers, but also protect the environment. What we must do going forward, though, is to make sure that as we put these policies forward, as we put these strategies forward, we ensure that we are being fair and inclusive and ensuring that we have an inclusivity approach that allows women to be part of this agenda, that allows youth to be part of this agenda. And I applaud you for ensuring that part of this conversation is going to be anchoring on what youth, listening to youth and what they tell us, but also that ensures that indigenous communities are catered for. All this is part of the momentum that the summit brought out and needs to be maintained. We need to ensure that smallholder farmers and weak consumers are not paying for shifts in the policies. And we need to ensure that there's sufficient science to support innovations and the planning so that we can be accommodative of how these people are brought on board. We also need to make sure that we are supporting the whole, the examples were put forward on how the EU is coming through on a food to farm strategy, on the fork to farm strategy and the whole of food systems approach is really something that we need to nurture across, ensuring that businesses that need to transform, retailers that need to transform, that have a foundation to build new businesses. We need to ensure that that foundation for building new businesses that is anchored in ensuring that we reduce the impact of climate change coming from agricultural systems while strengthening the people that benefit from food systems is going to be very critical. And EU's leadership is going to be extremely important here.
Well, thank you, Dr. Kalibata. You've set out what we need to do. In this conference, we are joined by, from across Europe and even around the world, many educators, innovators, entrepreneurs, researchers, all coming up with new ideas and new technologies, solutions and new products to change the way in which we produce and consume our food, to make it more resilient, more sustainable. What's your key message or key recommendations to them in particular?
So thank you again for that question. The thing that I'm most concerned about here, again, given climate change, given the need for us to come through on the health of people and given for us to keep our economies going, the thing I'm most worried about is that our innovations must keep up with the pace of the change that we are seeing. So as you just heard from the EU, a number of policies are being put in place. We must ensure that these policies are informed by science. I want to believe and have no question in my mind that they're being informed by science. That's the role of scientists. They must stay on top of this to ensure that science is forming policies, and policies are informing innovations, and we are taking responsibility for the type of things that are happening in our societies and our environment as a result. So I really want to make sure that we are anchoring most of what we are doing in science and innovation. I also want to make sure that technologies that are already available become available to everybody else. Let's find new ways of innovating how we reach people to ensure, like, for example, digitization, which is becoming, a common tool everywhere, that don't become reasons for us to exclude parts of society, areas of society that don't have access to those technologies. So let's innovate around those. Let's find ways of reaching people with what we already know is possible. So my call is that we stay on top of ensuring that policies are anchored in science and innovations are anchored in that. And we really ensure that the impact of climate change and the changes that need to happen as a result of climate change are happening and are being informed by science and the right level of innovation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kalibata. I think a message there, not just to the scientists and researchers, but also to the policymakers to bring those researchers and those knowledgeable people in to the science-based decision-making. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to move now to your colleague, our final speaker for this introductory part of this morning, and that is Gerda Vermeuch, the UN Assistant Secretary General and coordinator of the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement and member of the Advisory Committee for the 2021 Food Systems Summit. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Let's talk about an area that is of particular interest. Unhealthy diets have become a primary source of the food health burdens we see on society, of malnutrition, environmental degradation. There's huge disparities between rich and poor. We heard there Dr. Kalibata calling for technologies to be an inclusive element, not something that divides society. What kind of vision or guidance has the UN Food Systems Summit provided on these particular issues? And what would you say are the priority food transformations that we need in order to achieve a healthy society or a healthy food system and well-being for all?
Thank you very much for inviting me, and good morning, everyone. I'm extremely happy to join this important conference, because I can see that young people are stepping up with their menu for change, with a manifesto, and I'll come back to this. But first, let me start with your answering your question, because right now more than 90% of all our diseases are related to food. If you go through the root causes of all diseases today, they are all related with the food we eat and the resilience we have built. Not only physically, but also mentally. And this is very often underestimated, the importance of nutrition, not only for the physical development and well-being, but also for the mental and cognitive development and well-being. And I started with the fact that our current food system is bankrupting our health system. And by the way, is destroying our climate. But let me put first the bankrupting our health system. Right now, and in 2019, the European Union invested or spent 8.3%, according to the OECD, 8.3% of their GDP in health, and it's only booming. It's like a bird starting off, but into the wrong direction. And of course, COVID is part of it. But as was said already by yourself, Madam Moderator, in your introductory remarks, health and well-being and healthy food need to invest in people's resilience and in people's trust in each other, but also in the food system. So right now, according to the OECD, in Europe, we invest or spend already more than 1,000 billion euros, and it's only going up if we are not able to reverse it. So let me make a few suggestions here what the EU can do internally and what to my deep wish, the EU would play as an international, as a global role. First of all, I would like to commend the European Union for its farm to fork strategy. It's really focusing on sustainability. But if you allow me, it is a little bit more focused on saving the planet than saving people. So a little bit more a balanced approach between investing in the planet and in the people and in prosperity, including creating decent jobs along the whole food value chain, could get a little bit more attention. Having said this, I am extremely encouraged by the announcement of the European Commissioner and his announcement of the European Union or the European Commission or the European Union for the ambition to have a European food systems proposal by 2023. And here I would like to make a strong recommendation. Foster national food systems dialogues. Don't take for granted that people come to the table in a conference, bring their innovative approach, and if we take their innovative approach, we will make this world a better place, including each and everyone. This is not the case 2021, 2022, 2023. Because trust has gone. I don't know exactly why, I'm not a psychologist, but we need to sit around the table, confront each other, discuss each other, listen to each other, understand each other, and agreeing together on an agenda. And Agnes Kalibate has elaborated on how many countries have taken a food systems dialogues approach and how they are moving on. Yesterday, we had the opportunity of celebrating the 1000th food systems dialogue, and the dynamics were great. Did we agree when we entered the virtual table? Not at all. Do we agree after we have met each other after 3, 4, 5 times, telling each other also from time to time the uncomfortable truth? Yes, we start to understand each other and build an agenda together. And with building an agenda of action to improve our food systems for the planet, for people, and for prosperity, we are also investing in renewed trust, which is so important. So my strong plea is, please encourage national food systems dialogues in which both the consumers, the whole food value chain, but also, of course, food producers are involved, with an extra attention to women, indeed, as was said already before, and young people. And there I am with the manifesto again. I applaud the 10 young people who have created the menu for food change and the manifesto. 6 very strong points that I would like to emphasize and embrace and recommend. I have only one remark. I can see here, and I applaud women for this, that women are the agents of change. In the 10 manifesto drafters, there is only one man, which is as such fine, because we know that women are the agents of change, but let us avoid to put all the burden to make this happen and the extra costs on the shoulders of women. So be extremely cautious that we don't put everything again on the plate of women, because women have already so much on their plate and they need to get the opportunity to step up to really equality in all places of the world, including in European countries. Don't underestimate that women are still not at an equal position as men are. So There are two things that I extra want to embrace. I embrace the whole manifesto, all 6 points, but the true cost of food is something I would like to embrace extra. And there is also a recommendation from my side for the European Union. Please consider to introduce a system of checks and balances, incentives for healthy and sustainable produced foods, and taxes for and higher prices for unsustainable and unhealthy foods, whereby the revenues of the taxes on, for instance, sugar, fat, too much salt, that they are make sure that they are looped back to into investment in more healthier and sustainable food systems. So that is one thing. The other thing I would like to emphasize from the Youth Manifesto is the investment in education. Too many people do not know what food means to them, what food can mean to them in a positive and a negative way. And I think awareness raising at school, starting from the primary school, can not only teach children, but if you teach children, they will teach their parents too. That is already a fact that we are learning. Let me just jump to the global platform, because I think Farm to Fork needs to translate also to the global level. And I think a little bit more attention to healthy food and healthy food systems in the international in the global partnerships department could be emphasized here. I'm extremely happy to see that the European Commission will make a strong commitment at the Nutrition for Growth Summit that is taking place next week, but in a systemic way. I would embrace it. Then I think it is important for European countries that they can own their own solutions. Slovenia will do it in a different way compared to Spain, and Malta will do it in a different way compared to Austria, for instance. So embrace the diversity, because countries want to take it from their own way. But if it's only focusing on sustainability for people, for the planet, of course, and for creating jobs and equality, this is also something that needs to be embraced at the global level. Then I think Europe could play an important role in rethinking and reforming the global system of subsidies, agriculture and food subsidies, that is now up to 600 billion every year. Use this, don't cut it, because people don't like to get less. Don't cut it, but just refocus it to make the $600 billion of annual subsidies, to make them to support to go into a different and better and more sustainable direction. I think the European Union could play an important role there. Finally, when it comes to trade, I would like to see the European Commission and the European Union as such to play an important role there, to get more fair trade, including the attention that is for upcoming markets, developing countries, but also for small and medium-sized enterprises, and for a role that female entrepreneurs can and should play. Access is a crucial one. My final remark is don't underestimate how the world is observing the European Union. And being outside of the European Union right now, I can see that the world is looking at the European Union as a beacon of hope, as a region in the world that can bring renewed trust. But then I think the intention and strong promise of the EU needs to be that young people and women are involved in such a way that they are treated equal and don't get the burden of what our generation is doing right now, that they get the handover of all the burden. So let us make sure that we leave this world a better place to the next generation, and that we take care in a firm way of what we have created, preparing the world for the next generation, so that they don't get all the burden and extra costs that we have created and caused, but they can take the world further onto a sustainable world for people and the planet alike. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much there. You've taken me on quite a journey with your speech. It's quite shocked and maybe downhearted at the beginning, that statement that our food systems are damaging our health systems. And I do agree with you wholeheartedly. Women have often got too much on their plate. And we do have a session on trying to tackle the question of trust. So these are things that we're going to talk about. Just as a closing, do you have any final remark or message to maybe some of the younger generation who might be listening?
Well, step up and step in. Make your voice heard. Of course, you can complain, but complain is only a one-way communication. And we need your thought, your braveness, your innovative approaches around the table. Not only to give young people a voice, but also to involve them in solution making. I think my generation is a generation of taking a few little steps into the right direction. I think next generations are ready to take a leapfrog, and we should only support them without putting too much burden on their plate.
Well, thank you very much for that, for setting us up for a great 2 days. And also let me thank our other speakers as well. All of our keynotes in this morning's session have focused on the UN summit and all the commitments that have been made. Don't go away. Come back in just a moment for our next session, where we're going to look at innovation as possibly one of the solutions and drivers of delivering on those commitments. Stay with us.